My sister was set to marry a guy who was a complete douchebag. He seemed like a nice catch to any outsider. He was tall, handsome, very confident, a doctor. Basically the sort of guy any woman would swoon over. Unfortunately, he was a sociopathic, unrepentant narcissist, devoid of any empathy, who would take out his anger on anybody he felt beneath him and seemed to enjoy doing it. You know how basically they say, don't look at how your partner treats you, look at how he treats others. And that's how he'll eventually treat you. My sister didn't pick up on that. I picked up on it early. This guy was really mean. Would berate and insult people for the smallest thing and would lose his cool with anybody who looked at him the wrong way. He started doing it to me, and I told my sister early on, this guy's an asshole. She was like,
Nah.
You two will eventually get along, you just got off on the wrong start. I told him I've seen him do that to other people, but she seemed to think, oh, but he's nice to me, I'm the special one. Maybe I can change him. Or I have no idea what she was thinking. After about 2 years together, when they were engaged, the cracks were evident. My parents loved him. His dad and my dad go way back. They both went to the same medical school together and have been close friends for decades. Her fiancé is also good friends with my 2 older brothers. After 2 years, my sister was realizing this guy was an asshole. He's always been an asshole, and he won't change. There was a really painfully obvious example one day when we were having dinner, and my sister's fiancé and my dad were having a discussion about something political. My sister tried to offer her opinion into the discussion, and they both snickered. Then this guy just started berating her and ripping into her in front of everyone, making her feel this small. I could sense her pain. She was just quiet and just sat there taking it. I was thinking, what are you doing with this guy? He has no respect for you. He has no love for you. Another time our family was at this dinner function where a lot of big people were around. My sister's fiancé completely left my sister alone at the table with me, and was sitting at this other table with 2 women, very obviously flirting with them semi-drunk. He just left her all alone at the table. I asked her what was wrong, why was he ignoring her? She told me they had had an argument earlier and this was his way of punishing her. You see what I mean when I say this guy is a complete sociopath? My sister and I are really close, and even though I'm younger by far, little brothers aren't devoid of wisdom. And I've been urging her from day one to break up with this guy before she gets in too deep. Well, now that she'd spent 2 years with him and was engaged, she was obviously in too deep. And she used to tell me about all the outbursts he has, how he treats her with no respect. We often had long discussions, just me and her, where she'd spill open like a can of beans and just divulge all the bullshit that he's put her through recently. Sometimes she'd cry and I'd be there to help her out, but she still seemed to want to stick with him. She actually convinced herself that he loved her behind all that horrible treatment, and couldn't pull herself to cancel the engagement, what with our parents, his parents, everyone counting on it. She knew they'd all say she's crazy, turning down this smart, handsome doctor. I kept urging her to break up, but she stuck with the he'll change or he loves me deep down excuses. It all came to a heads when one day she very publicly exploded at him. We were having a huge dinner, both sides of our families, and I was sitting next to him. He kept bullying me the entire night. Move your elbows over, couldn't you wear something a bit more presentable? Stop sticking your hand out like that, it's rude, don't you think you've had enough of that? If I asked him to pass a bowl or the sauce or something, he'd hand it over but then pull away and be like, say please, say thank you. He was smiling the entire time, laughing. My 2 older brothers were also snickering. They didn't seem to mind this guy was publicly bullying me and having fun with it. He and my dad started having one of their conversations again, and my dad started airing out all his general frustrations and disappointments regarding me. And they started both talking about my life openly in front of me. Her fiancé then turned to me and started openly lecturing me, and when I tried to ignore him, hey, are you listening to me? What's the matter with you? Your dad never taught you any respect? My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. My sister just then basically exploded. She was sitting at the other side of the table, guessing she didn't want to be near him, but she was watching what was going on the entire time. Me and Diamara, she is 12 years old, have had a rough summer. She's been more defiant than usual. I've been dating her mom Mara for 2 years now. 9 months ago, they moved in with me, Maple. Both Dio and Mara have an on-again / off-again relationship with Dio's dad, Dionysus. He's pretty much never paid child support, comes and goes as he pleases into Dio's life. Typical shitty-ass part-time dad. I've tried to fill the dad role in her life, while still understanding boundaries, taking things slow, etc. This summer Dionysus decides he wants to be a real dad and takes Dio in for a month. Good for him, not my business, and Mara agrees. When Dio came back home because school started, she was a lot different. Really mean to me, very dismissive. A few days ago she got caught shoplifting at the mall. Security took her in, then called Mara, who didn't answer, then called Dionysus, who didn't answer, and finally me. I answered. They told me I had to pick her up or she'll be handed over to juvenile. I didn't say anything to her while I picked her up. I apologized to security, apologized to the store. I even tipped the security guards plus the store employees because it's up. They had to deal with that. I assured them Dio would be punished appropriately. I'm speaking to her in a strong, affirmative voice while we're in the car. Not yelling, but in a fatherly tone, I suppose. I'm telling her how up it is to steal, and how I don't. With thieves, and how I absolutely don't voluntarily. With any kind of police, so I don't appreciate any of this, nor will I accept it in my house. She snaps back that I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell her what to do. From now on, if I want to tell her something, I need to clear it with her real father first. That killed my soul. For the past year or so, I've treated her as my own daughter. I've paid for their housing, I've paid for her mom's car, her schooling, her food, everything. Her bio dad dropped $100 check off one time in the past year. In check bounced, so I had to call him up and he brought cash over. I told Mara about all of this. She was appalled at what Dio said, but she never made Dio apologize because she's not wrong, you're not her dad. A couple of days later Dio asks me for some money to pay for her uniform / accessories she needs for a sport she's involved in. I say go ask your dad. She scoffs and says her dad doesn't have the money for it, so I have to pay for it. I tell her, I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell me what I have to pay for. She cried to Mara, who tells me I'm not being an adult about the situation. Mind you, I never received an apology or a thanks for our entire previous situation. Mara says Dio is a kid and I need to stop acting like a kid too. I'm a professional ballet dancer for a living, but I also do some modeling in my spare time. Last weekend, I was doing a latex shoot. Before anybody says anything, it wasn't anything fetish-wise. It was just a shoot that called for wearing more uncommon types of fabrics. My outfit was a black full-body catsuit, so think of a skin-tight garment that covers from neck to toe, including gloves. If you've ever put on a wetsuit, then you can probably imagine how much of a pain it is. It's a pretty in-depth process that involves lots of baby powder, a lot of sweat, and some less than ladle-like stances. Dressing usually takes anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes start to finish. I always dread it, but can't argue with the results. Anyway, my boyfriend was in my dressing room as I was getting changed. He doesn't always come along for shoots, but I needed him that day because my car is being repaired and we needed to go somewhere afterwards. His one kinda annoying thing is that he talks to me while I'm getting changed, even though I very politely asked him to let me do it in peace. If I'm just putting on a dress or something less complicated, it's not a problem. But with latex, you have to concentrate, seriously. My facial expression is pretty similar to when I'm doing heavy leg presses or squats at the gym, so that the garment slips on correctly and, more importantly, you don't rip it. It's very easy to tear if you're not careful. And a full-body catsuit can cost upwards of $700 to $800 minimum. So as I'm struggling, may have been on the floor on my back with my feet up on a chair. pushing my butt up to get the garment over my hips. He won't stop talking. Come on, girl, you got this. Do you want help? I don't think you put on enough baby powder. Babe, you got this, get that big ass in there. And I politely asked him several times to just let me concentrate. He responds by saying, relax, I'm just trying to help, before patting me on the butt. I'd had enough. I demanded he stand outside because he was being super distracting and I couldn't afford to rip the garment. I didn't ask him to help because there's a technique to getting latex on and he doesn't have it. He got all pissy and was like, whatever, maybe you need a bigger size anyway, before leaving the shoot completely and taking the car. I had to get an Uber home after the shoot. On one hand, I was getting super frustrated, I was hot and sweaty, and combined with my kinda short temper, I was getting pissed off that I couldn't get the suit on. On the other hand, I asked him multiple times not to comment or distract me. And I never indicated that I was in the mood to be touched. I am currently divorced from my ex Thomas of 30 years. We ended up seeing a lawyer to help with dividing stuff. Everything was pretty much wrapped up till he said he no longer wanted any part of our kids' lives. I didn't argue with him about it since I already know what it's like having a parent who doesn't want you around, or wants to be in your life. I asked what he wanted me to tell the kids and he just said, whatever you think is best, I don't care. I don't want to parent anymore. Everything was in agreement and signed with no fuss. A few weeks later I get a call from my ex-mill asking if we could meet each other. When I came over she broke down crying and begging to let my ex see his kids again. I was confused about what she meant because not once did he contact me after meeting the lawyer. She went on about how my ex said he really missed them and that I was just a petty B*TCH for taking full custody. Also that he was crying for days about it. I told her my version of events and she called it BS, saying her son wouldn't lie like that, especially not about his kids. Then I decided to call him in front of her. He didn't know she and I were meeting that day. I said, hey, has a soccer game in a few days, which he did, and I was wondering if you wanted to go? I know he'd really love it and be happy to see you. He instantly said no, I already said I'm not doing this anymore. I asked, well, how do you think this is going to affect Denise, his mom? She is over the moon about them. He just said she loves me more than the kids, so I doubt this will be an issue for her. After a bit more talking we finally hung up. Ex-Mill was straight-faced and nodded at everything that just happened. She asked me to leave and said we would be in touch. Later that day I got a call from my ex saying how it's my fault he was kicked out of his mom's house, and possibly will be taken off her will. Also that none of his family members will talk to him because of what ex-Mill heard. He threw a lot of insults at me before I hung up, and now him and his mates keep calling and texting me. My friend is saying I shouldn't have said anything in the first place and I ruined his life. Yes, I plan to let Denise see the kids because I know she just wants to give them the world along with the rest of his family.